I downloaded a competitor's app at the time and said, "Hello, how are you?" into it to try and communicate with the police officer. It actually come out saying, "Hello, I love you." The main part of what failed in the translation was the speech recognition. These big companies really want to focus on customer satisfaction, and the big point is communication with their customers.
Welcome back. This is Conversation Artificial Intelligence. This is Paolo, your host, and today we're going to go into a very interesting domain. So translations. People of the world do commerce with one another. People that are in different countries do commerce. They travel a lot and they need to communicate. The amount of communication across countries that we have today is unparalleled, and it's much more than it used to be. So translation has become an important element of doing business with other countries. With me today, we have Danny Mai, who is the founder and CEO of Lingmo International, a company in real-time translation that has become very, very famous around the globe. Hello, Danny. How are you today?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Very happy to have you here. So you have a unique story, and you started this company out of the frustration of going to China in a trip, and you couldn't talk. So tell us how you got involved with AI and what you were doing.
The first happened when I was, as you said, on a trip to China. I didn't have actually any tech background. I was a plumber at that time, and I was there for some business, and my passport was stolen. What happened then was I downloaded a competitor's app at the time and said, "Hello, how are you?" into it to try and communicate with the police officer, and it actually come out saying, "Hello, I love you." So that was, let's just say, the police officer wasn't too happy about that. So from that, that's where I kind of come back and did a lot of research in artificial intelligence and translation to see if there was a need for it in the marketplace, and there was. So, we went in and started building the product.
What does Lingmo do today?
So Lingmo, we're a SaaS translation solutions company. So we provide solutions to enterprises to best communicate with their customers, whether it's via live chat, it's via voice to voice. We have a range of APIs that are available to enterprise customers. We do have consumer products as well, which is hardware devices such as smartwatch, fully independent earpiece, as well as apps. So we do the consumer market with our main focus being on SaaS products.
Tell us a little bit about those beginnings. What happened in the beginning? How did you start it off from the incident with the Chinese police officer? What happened afterwards?
After the incident in China, come back and did a lot of research into the translation industry. And, it was 6 years ago. So it was back when, the artificial intelligence and that was really in its infancy. So from that, I worked out, and again, it was all in research I've done by myself. The main part of what failed in the translation was the speech recognition. So if the speech recognition wasn't accurate, the rest of the translation had a snowball effect. So from that, we went out and I sold the family home and brought on board some developers, and we started creating our own product, focusing on that need. Then we went to, with the focus on consumer market, then we moved to the enterprise solution side.
So your story is kind of unique for those who are in Silicon Valley, because usually here people go ahead and they go and raise $10 million for doing something like this, at least. But that was not your case. How did you get your first customer?
The initial one was we've had some angel investors at the start, as you said, exactly. In Australia, it's a little bit different to Silicon Valley. We've got to have a product, we've got to have product market fit before we get any angel investors. So we got some angel investors, which really boosted us into the consumer market. But we've got our real first customers when we released the independent earpiece Translate One-to-One at the United Nations in Geneva. From that, we did it in collaboration with IBM and the UN. From that, we sold out of those units within 16 days. So that's where it really come to us that what we had, the market wanted. So that was really our product market fit there. And, believe it or not, our biggest market at that point was Brazil. Then from that, it sort of stemmed. We had major companies in airlines, retail and so on, coming to us asking if we could customize our solutions because there was a need for them. That's where we've gone into the enterprise solution market now.
So today the company has different business lines, has been established. What I would like to do is dive a little bit into what are the different services that you provide in the different markets.
The enterprise solution, so the SaaS program that we like, the solutions we have now, that's where we really see the growth. We have a lot of our enterprise customers, whether it's airlines or retail companies, that have been trying to communicate with their customers effectively in different languages for 10, 15 years. They've dealt with it. They haven't found a solution that could fill that problem. So that's where we're really providing solutions for that. So one of them is our live chat solution at the moment. So it comes up on your website. You can chat with an agent. Most of them at the moment are in one language, which is English. So we have a live chat which is across 80 languages. The customer can type in Arabic and the representative can receive it in English in real time and communicate vice versa, like they're communicating in the same language. So that's where we see the exceptional growth is in the enterprise side of it. Our consumer side, we have our apps as well as our hardware devices. With that, we've got a lot of competitors in that marketplace. So that's why we really shifted a lot of our focus to the enterprise solutions, because there's the need there. With the consumer side, we're letting it organically grow, and we're getting some really good growth from that because a lot of people use our services and see how accurate it is, which actually in turn goes to their company, and we start beginning communication with their bosses.
What are the applications where you see a need for translating speech in real time?
So where we've seen the need for that is it goes in peaks and troughs. So at the moment, it's the tech side of it. But with the speech, for an airline, for example, it could be a communication over the announcements in the airport. You walk through an airport, say you're walking through one in China, and they're speaking in Chinese, but all you hear is your name. You have no idea where you've got to go or what's going to happen. So with the voice-to-voice side of it, you could the representative could be speaking in Chinese. They recognise that your passport's Australian or my passport's Australian. It comes out in English on the loudspeaker so that you can actually understand where you're going. So that's one use case. Another one is in call centres as well. So it's really the customer focus side of engagement, where we're seeing a lot of the growth, where the call center representative may be fluent in a couple of languages, but if you have the translation voice-to-voice side of it, you'll be able to communicate in any one of 30 languages.
So at this point, you're a global company. What countries really you're seeing most of activities in this area? Is like you're focusing on the Southeast Asia, or it's everywhere in the world?
We're seeing a lot of growth in Europe, the US, and South America actually, which was it was when we first had our consumer products. Brazil, as I said, was our biggest market. Brazil is the only Portuguese-speaking country in South America. So once you work that out, you can see why. But they're Southeast Asia, Singapore, and that, a lot of them can speak English and multilingual. We are seeing some growth there, but we're seeing it really in Europe, the US, and South America.
And that's primarily airline and retail e-commerce type of space.
Yeah, banks as well. In Australia, we just had the Royal Commission here, which they put a big thing on the banks where they've got to be able to communicate across multiple languages now with their customers. So banks are starting to. So it's across all enterprise sections, but it's mainly banks, airlines, retail, really customer focused or customer centric companies.
What would you say that is your competitive advantage at this point?
I think it's a combination of both. We did come to the marketplace early, which in hindsight, we went for investment early, but we weren't able to secure it. So if we were to be able to secure it in that early days, I would have thought that would be too early to the market. So we've kind of grown with the marketplace as the technology's grown. So I think that's really one of our big competitive. We've been around. We have our own development team. We've developed our own products, so we can customize it to suit individual companies if required. But where we've really, it is a differentiating is the enterprise solutions. These big companies that really want to focus on customer satisfaction, and the big point is communication with their customers. So that you can't just assume someone's going to be able to speak English or the native language or wherever that company is headquartered. So that's where one advantage is we've got a range of solutions that suits enterprises, but we can also customize it to suit individual companies. that's where one of our I think one of our big competitive analysis is. Also, aside of that, because we've trained our systems, we've created our own training algorithms and everything like that, we can train our system for industry specific companies. So airlines have specific airline terminology, which won't translate literally. We translate it contextually. So that's another really big advantage of what we do for the enterprises.
So when it comes to things like accuracy of the translation, speed of the translation, it's a competitive battleground for among different companies, or you think the technology has reached a good level at this point?
The technology has reached a good level. It is still a battleground, like the accuracy, the latency of it. But with voice to voice, there's so many variables that come and can add to the latency. If the user doesn't speak clearly, the artificial intelligence takes time to try and work out what was said, and that increases the latency. So there's a lot of variables in there on it all. But, I see the way that we're moving, everything's becoming a lot clearer in the fact of artificial intelligence is really assisting us in what we do. It more inspected the training. So if you train it right and the user, speaks clearly and stuff, it is a battleground no matter who we compete with. But everything is improving day by day.
Just to get an idea, like how better is this technology compared to what was possible before?
In relation to the cost, it's per minute charge. It depends on the solution at the time. If it's text, is generally by per character, but again, it can be solution based. One thing that I kind of want to point out is, you've got interpreters, you've got translators out there that go to business meetings and stuff like that. What we're doing is we're trying to assist interpreters, for example, say at the United Nations. It's quite intensive of what they do. So if we can assist them in providing artificial intelligence or translation solutions, that's what we're aiming to do. But in relation to what, kind of what's different is, I'll use an example of myself when I was in China, when I was doing the plumbing business side of it. I had interpreters that I hired one in Shanghai, and they come to Beijing with me, and they couldn't actually understand the dialect in Beijing compared to Shanghai. So they weren't doing an effective translation. Whereas artificial intelligence, you train it to suit different dialects of Mandarin and other languages, and becomes a lot more efficient. You train it in different aspects of terminology, like cloud-based servers and stuff like that, where interpreters and translators, they've got to do translation across various different industries. So for them to keep up with the industry jargon of it is a bit hard. And the message could be, especially in the enterprise side, it could be $1 million deals going down, but there's confusion. So that's where not even just our solution, artificial intelligence and translation is really assisting interpreters and translators.
What makes it possible today and it was not possible 10 years ago?
It's a combination of things. So one's the technology, one's the industry knowledge of how we can train artificial intelligence to suit different dialects and nuances, for example. Other one is latency, the network capability. 10 years ago, the network wasn't as good as what it is now. We don't, 4G coming into 5G now in places. With the lower connectivity meant the translation wasn't real time or as close to real time as possible. And people were impatient in waiting. So it's a combination of things. I think it's also the data that's fed into it. So the more data you feed into your system to train it, the more accurate it's going to be. So you've got your data, your latency, and on all those issues is why it's, and then for the next 3 years with 5G and stuff, it's just going to get faster and faster, which means our compute power is faster, which means we could do it over phone calls, over Zoom and other such things. It just increases what we can do with it. The artificial intelligence and the servers can cope with it. It's getting it from the user to the server to do the translation and back in as fast as possible time.
So with that said, then what do you think will happen in the next 5 years technologically? So what is your anticipation?
There's a lot of things that's going to be possible with this technology. Again, it comes down to the network. As I said, for example, you'll be able to pick up a phone and you'll be able to speak in your language, and the other person on the other side of the world is getting in real time in their language. That's comes down to network connectivity. So it feels like, again, you're having a conversation in real time. Having a conversation in the same language, but effectively it's two different languages. The accuracy level, it's going to get up there a lot more than what it is now. You can never say anything's going to be 100%, but it's going to pick up the nuances, dialects, and slang a lot faster and a lot quicker, and it's going to train, as well as adding new languages. There's a lot of languages out there that aren't documented or anything like that. So adding new languages is going to be a big thing as well.
So what layer do you think in the technology will enable this increased accuracy, this increase in the number of languages that would be supported?
I think it's going to be the data, as you said, the data collection and the network connectivity. You got places in Central Africa. In our early days, we had discussions with some non-profit organisations that wanted to use our services in Africa, but being online based, internet based, like for the efficiency and the translation accuracy, they just didn't have the connectivity there. Not to mention the languages they were doing were quite remote. You got some forms of Zulu, which had their own dialects within Zulu. So there's those type of things where the data and then the connectivity is going to make it more accessible to everyone.
When you talk about connectivity, just to clarify this, do you talk about more countries being connected, more people being connected?
I think it's going to be a bit of everything you just said, but most importantly, a stable network. That's the big thing is, we can make our system work off, 2, 3G systems. It just takes longer for the translation to occur because the network is so slow. But it's how stable the network is. If you've got a 3G network that's intermittent, then the communication or the audio transmission to our server is going to be cut up, which means the translation is not going to be accurate. We've looked at online services, offline translations, but there's so many variables that come into that. Like if someone's not speaking clearly, the translation is not going to be accurate. It's, that's where really the connectivity comes into it. If there's a word that's mispronounced, the connectivity comes in, artificial intelligence works out, okay, they were supposed to say X instead of Y, and then they change it and put it into context so it actually translates and means what it says on the other end. So, the connectivity and stable, how stable the network is really that's where the growth's going to be. 5G is going to be awesome because it's really fast, but, that's sort of tier 1 countries. It's the tier 2 and tier 3 countries that, we want to really target as well with the non-profits, because that helps people. We created this company to help people. And that's where, the connectivity side of it is what we really were trying to work with.
We could also imagine that this could contribute significantly to education worldwide.
Yeah. So language learning is a big thing that we're starting to look into now. It's about how to effectively train people to learn a new language. We're looking into VR at the moment because the visual aspect, when someone reads, I think it's around 40-50% they intake. When it's visual learning, it's around 90%. So VR comes into play, but then it also comes back to the connectivity side. You've got to be connected to be able to interact with the VR headset to language learn. So, we're looking into that type of stuff now. We have an instant messaging service that someone can send a message from, rural Africa to anywhere around the world, and they can receive it in their language. So, we are working towards these countries or the people that really need it to communicate. It's just a slow process. That's where it's at the moment.
What was not possible a few years ago is becoming possible today. There are some specialized applications that right now are the domain of large companies that are global and so on. But we are on a trend of a technology that probably is going to be deployed on a very mass scale, and a lot of people will utilize that. And if you look at that trend, where do you see your company going?
I see it going a couple of different ways, to be honest. Like, we're going to have sort of a few aspects. One, as I said, is to really focus on the enterprise solutions with these enterprise companies talking to their customers freely in whatever language. A big thing that we really want to we're starting to get into now. We've got a couple of non-profits that we're working with to really get the technology out there and help people that actually need to communicate. Communication is, you just picture going to a country and you can't ask for a cup of coffee, or, you're trying to go to a coffee shop, as an example, and the frustration and how alone you feel not to be able to order a coffee or the coffee you want because you can't communicate. That goes for different aspects around the world. So, Africa, rural India, and so on, that they can't communicate with people, whether it's the non-profits trying to help them to give them water, or build a well in their town, or power and so on. So that's where we kind of see ourselves going as well, is really getting the technology out there to the enterprise solutions and really focusing on that side, but also giving back to people and being able to help and assist. That's why we, the frustration I had in China was I felt alone because I couldn't communicate. Everyone would feel alone if they can't communicate in some way. Communication is the key. So that's what we want to do, is bring communication to everyone.
What are, 2 or 3 tips that you think every entrepreneur should, you would share with every entrepreneur? What it is that they should know, and what it is that you feel like it's really important to as contributors?
The obvious ones, you got to work hard, especially if don't be scared to go into, entrepreneur. It's diving in and giving something a go. Don't be scared to try something out of your comfort zone. Like as you said, I was a plumber. I had no real industry knowledge in technology. So, if you go into a different industry, just be prepared to work twice as hard and get twice as many rejections, because you don't come from that industry. So for investors and so on, they're very weary of people trying different things. So before you do stuff, before you go to investors and so on, make sure you have a product so you can show them that it actually works. Another big thing which actually helped me was aligning yourself with the right people, with the right team. I had companies in the past where I felt like I had to do everything. And then I brought a couple of partners on that shared the workload, which actually let me focus more on the technology, and they were the commercial side of the products and sales and stuff. So it's a combination of a lot of things, hard work, but the real big thing is, which I say to a lot of people when I speak with them, especially younger ones, don't be afraid to give something up within your company, say equity stake or whatever it may be, to progress. I did it, as I said, in the early days where, I created this company, I put all my money into it. Why should I give anything away? With that kind of attitude, don't really move forward. You need to bring people in to help you take it to the next level. That's probably one of the biggest things that I learned.
And so with that said, I think this has been very intriguing. It's a company that was starting basically from nothing, working on one of the most advanced sector of artificial intelligence. So basically speech recognition and translation. So this is something that Google does. The world knows Google, but you, years before, have been able to establish a footprint, in a global footprint. It's a company that now is global, with customers all over the places in all the continents, starting with the modest resources. And so I think this is really the hell of the story. I really wanted to cover it, and it's so interesting. We wish you all the best and continued success. Thank you so much for being here on Conversation Artificial Intelligence. And thank you to our audience as well.
Thanks for having me.